Oh, there we go. Oh my gosh. Welcome, everybody, to the Think Outside podcast brought to you by baits.com. I don't know about you, but just watching that intro makes me wish that I was somewhere fishing rather than sitting in the house, although it is about 117 degrees in Tennessee today. My name's Crispin Powley. I'm with GSM Outdoors, and we thank you for being here with us. No matter how you're consuming this podcast, we appreciate you being here. Always want to start off by just saying thank you to our viewers, our listeners, and invite you to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And this whole thing is always centered around bringing you kind of the backstory, if you will, the inside scoop on kind of what things that we're doing in the fishing world, things going on in the fishing industry within our brands and overall within the tournament scene, within just general fishing, just kind of what we live, what we do. And we just like to get on here and talk about it, share that with the viewers. Just getting in from ICAST, it's a really, really busy time of year in the fishing industry. Just a lot going on, but had an opportunity to sit down today with you guys and bring on a guy that I just can't say enough about. It's a guy that I've had some dealings with, knowledge of, been in the same circles of. I think we kind of knew each other, but not great. But it's a guy that I now consider a friend. And I know a lot of you feel the same way that I do about him and just completely respect what he's done and how he's done it. And that is Mike Bucca. Mike, want to thank you for jumping on here today. Mike is obviously the namesake of our Bucca brand here in the GSM portfolio. Mike is the beauty, brains, and brawn behind Bull Shad and everything that is Bull Shad. Just been bringing a lot of awesome stuff to the fishing industry, specifically the swimbait category, for a long time. I've personally spent way more money than I want my wife to know on Mike's products over the years. Caught some of my biggest fish. Matter of fact, every day when I log into Microsoft Teams, my profile picture is me with just a shade under 10. He was like a 997 that I caught on a 6-inch Bull Shad. So every day when I log on, I got a picture of me holding that fish, and I think about that, and I bet I am not alone. And, anglers that have incredible memories that are due to you and your products, your brand. So without further ado, Mike, thanks for joining me, man.
Always, man. Good to be here.
We're glad to have you. I think I've told you this before. I'm not sure, but I think I have. The first time I think I remember meeting you, talking to you, years and years ago, some 25 years ago, I was pretty active on the bass fishing homepage. Man, and that's going back a while.
Yes.
And there was an event, a gathering, a breakfast, if you will, maybe around the Nashville Boat and Tackle Show. And I think I met you there for the first time. I was at the time working for Stratus and Champion Boats there in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, in marketing, and just a kid, wet behind the ears, loved bass fishing. And when I wasn't talking about it during the day, I was on the water doing it. And when I wasn't doing that, I was reading about it, and, forums and chats and all that stuff was in its infancy back then. And that is where I came to know Triton Mike Bucca.
No, the bass fishing homepage was, I believe, is one of the actual first fishing forums on the internet, well before Facebook and everything. And
Right.
I was a big part of that. And that was my, my entry into the fishing industry, I guess you could say. And those were some good times, that we had on
Yeah.
those pages. It went far left and it went far right a lot of different times, but it was a lot of interesting comments and stuff. But that was definitely an interesting time. And I remember we used to meet, had those gatherings. It was just a meeting of those people on that page. There was a central location. I think they had them on Lake Fork. I think we had one on Lake Pickwick, and then we meet for at Shoney's, I believe, before the show in Nashville when it was actually in the Trade Mart or whatever that is thing is downtown.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called. I could drive you right to it. I know where
Yeah,
it's at, but yeah, that was
now in
it. It was a
Lebanon, now,
Shoney's.
different space. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, I
that
think it was a
was a
Shoney's.
long time ago.
Yeah, I haven't. I may not have eaten at a Shoney's since then, Mike. To be honest with you, I don't even know if they're still around. But what I want to do first is let's talk a little bit about you, your background. How your life brought you to a point to where you said, you know what, I'm gonna build swim baits. That's what I'm good at. I know how to do it. So, man, if you don't mind, kind of bring us up to speed. Start wherever you want. You can start as a baby. You can start as, as recently as you want. But tell us kind of how you ended up in the fishing world.
Well, I mean, I was born in D.C. and then I moved to South Mississippi, which is where I consider I grew up. But I'm still growing up here in Georgia, and I got my degree in restaurant management. And I worked for various restaurant companies, and that's a tough way to go, for a career, But the cool thing about the restaurant industry is it really prepared me for what I was about to get into. It taught me how to run a business. It taught me systems. It taught me how to order. It taught me how to handle people. It taught me how to handle customers. You get a good meddling of how to run a business when you're a restaurant guy. You're the marketing guy. You're the sales guy. You're the customers. You're the cook. You're the server. You're the bartender. You're everything. You're jack of all trades. And but then I was into guiding a little bit. I started guiding there for 15 years. I've guided all over Ross Barnett, Gunnersville. Altoona is my main lake that I got it on here locally. And I ran into a problem. I got frustrated. I was catching a lot of small fish, and I wanted to try to catch bigger fish for my clients. And I knew the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So I knew I had to change something, and I know going smaller, I'm just going to catch more small fish. So what happens when I go bigger? When I happen to know some people out west, and Terry Battisti was one of those guys, and I picked his brains a little bit, and I says, try some bigger baits, and see what happens. And things got interesting. By no means did I slay the bigger fish, but I became more consistent with it. And some bells and whistles go off when that happens, and you're like, well, what if you do this? What if you do that? And, I started piddling with it a little bit. And then before too long, people all over the United States, especially in the South, a lot of people think swim baits were a Western thing back then. And because the only big fish, I said, well, I'm here to show you that it works for the Southern people too. It's just a matter of preference. Trout baits work here and shad baits work there. But one of the things that I noticed is that we didn't have any shad swim baits back then. Everything was Western based. Everything was trout based. So that's when I said, well, let's try to make some trout swim baits. Some shad swim baits. And gizzard shad was one of the first ones. If I'm not mistaken, I was one of the very first ones to do a hard resin shad bait. And that's where the Bull Shad was born, and it just got to be a little hectic there, a lot of people flying in, people contacted me about how to fish them, where I was fishing them, because they blew their mind that these things actually work. And it got to be a vicious cycle where, I was going home, making swim baits, sleeping, guiding, making swim baits. People were buying them off of me. People were stopping me at gas stations. Hey, you're the swim bait guy. And I would just cut one off and give it to them, and that was no big deal. I was there to help my clients catch bigger fish. I had no plans or even ideas that I would even do this full time. And it went on and on for about a year and a half, 2 years. And I'm like, you know what? I'm at a crossroads here where I can't make enough baits for my clients and the customers that are asking for them. I said, I have to pick one of these things. I can't do guiding and making baits at the same time. And I said, well, I can always come back to the guiding gig, let's try the swim bait thing. And I still got pictures of me working on my kitchen table, and putting baits together. And, I started off at one house in a spare bedroom. It was a computer room, just like this, 10 by 10 space. And I was pouring resin in there and I had carpet. I ruined the absolute crap out of my carpet. My wife was livid, and so Mike said, we need to go to a house with a basement. I said, okay, fine. So we recarpeted everything. Sold that house, went to a house with a basement. That's about a 20, or maybe a 30 by 10 basement. Plenty of room, 3 times bigger than what I'm used to. And we ruined the basement for us too. It was a nice basement when we started. And an odd thing happened is we had a water heater break and it flooded the basement. And and the insurance covered the floor that we screwed up because of the water heater. So we moved into a shop. It was a 1,800 square foot shop. And I looked at this thing for months. I said, dude, this is a big step. This is something that I'm not sure this is what we need to do, but we went ahead and did it. I said, I'll never need another space bigger than this. No way in heck will I need anything. 3 years later, we outgrew that. And now we're at the shop we're at now where we have a storefront. It's basically twice the size. So it's like 3,600 square feet.
Yeah, it's a great spot. It's
getting to be a handful at this level, and I don't know. I don't see us moving anytime soon, but it wouldn't surprise me just to upgrade, what we have and being able to modernize it more, being able to get a shop that I can call my own and not one that I rent.
Right.
That's kind of how we got started. Like I said, I had no plans of doing this full time. That was not even on the radar, but God works in mysterious ways, and He led me to this. And I have no formal training in making baits, zero, no woodworking experience, no college, no nothing. I just did it with my hands. I just took a piece of wood and I carved it the best way I knew how. Traced a shape out of a picture online and just carved it the best that I could. And I had enough ability to make it look halfway decent, And it's amazing how far I've come since then. Now you've got CAD generated stuff. You got 3D printers. You could do all sorts of stuff now, and a lot more, better, prettier than what I was doing. But it's been an interesting ride, And then I went with the Ketchco guys, and that went really, really well. And then I jumped on with you guys, GSM. That's going very, very well as well. So it's been interesting. I enjoy it. It's been a great ride. And I think the toughest part is just, staying level and trying to be innovative and doing the right things and treating people the right way. And like I said, back carried me, being able to handle people and handle employees, handle the accounting, the ordering, the systems, and training people is a big thing. Knowing how to train people and tell, show, do, review, that kind of stuff. So, but that's it in a nutshell.
You've got an incredible skill set, as a whole, as a manager, as a craftsman, as a businessman. I've dealt with you on all those fronts, and I'm always super impressed. I have we talked about this before we merged to start Bucca brand. I have a very high level of respect for you and your product and the way you've conducted yourself and handled customer service and remained authentic to the category and the things that you do well. Haven't gotten out there and gotten, just to build something to sell. Like, I think you've done it really well. And the collaboration was, in my mind, pretty easy. At the end of the day, I'm a bait guy. I love to fish. I won a BFL back in the early 2000s on a osprey on Kentucky Lake. Nobody here even knew what those things were back then. Like, I've always been we just wrapped up a 3-day product development meeting, and my team is so tired of hearing me go, but we could build that bigger and catch bigger fish on it. Like, I feel like I say that to every single project, and you've done a tremendous job of that. I know, and I bet you know way more than I do, countless pro anglers who have won countless dollars on a bull shad that'll never get talked about because their sponsor bait is the one that gets all the love. But I know several throughout my career in this industry that behind the curtain owe you a whole lot of winnings.
There's probably more people that the list is shorter of those who don't have one than the ones that do have one.
I bet you're right.
I see.
Go ahead.
I see lots of pictures. Some of the idols that I grew up, watching and using my baits, and that's that'll make you blush. It's really cool to see that. And they're getting with the program, and it's been a constant go up like that. I had Edwin Emers, we were helping him during the MLF event there, and he was raw. He was real raw, and he was losing some fish. I said, I think your rod's a problem. That 7-inch Bull Shad was loading up that entire rod, and I said, you need to really use a stouter rod. To be able to get the hook shot in them. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Everybody's got to learn, and I think it's amazing how many pros come up to me and says, hey, what are you doing? What do I need to know to be dangerous at this? And that's something that I want to get into with a video format, is to teach these people, not just pros, but individuals. You have a huge influx of new people coming into the swim bait side of things. They want to see what we're about and want to see what swim baits are about and what they can do with them. But they just get that lack of confidence there. They don't know what to do. They just kind of lose a little bit of their momentum when they get into something bigger that they're not used to. And I think that's something that I want to do and get into a video format, is teach those people, put them on the right path, put them on the right track, equipment line, not just equipment line and reels, but where to do it, how to do it, tips, tricks, all that kind of stuff, so that they know that they're confident in what they are using, and not only tell them how, but why these things are done. So, but you're starting to see a lot more people come in there. That's what I've learned over the 9 shows that I did this year, is a lot of people are new at this. They really honestly don't know a lot of what they're doing. They're working a glide bait and they have the rod tip to the side. You need to keep your rod tip down. The bait's coming out of the water. So, it's help them. So, but that's something that I'm working on. So,
and you're good at that. You're a good teacher. I know I've picked your brain some, and on bait design and on application and things. And I think you're a good teacher. I think I'm all in on that. Anything we can do to help you make that happen. I love that. Ultimately, Mike, I think I told you this in the beginning. Matter of fact, I think you and I may have, I don't know if I read you commented on it or not, but there was a thread the other day on Swimbait Universe talking about resin versus ABS and wood versus plastic and all that. And, the fact of the matter is, I love anything that gives people confidence and it gives them a tool to do the job they want to do. And, I can go, I can get online and I can buy a $400 shotgun and I can go shoot ducks with it. I can also spend $1,600 on a new Beretta and I can go shoot ducks with it.
Sure.
And, there may be some things that $1,600 Beretta does better than that $400 gun, but I can get in the game and be hunting with that $400 gun. And that's kind of how I look at Bucca brand. Man, you're partnering with us to bring affordable options that are still incredibly useful. I've caught some giants on that 6-inch ABS trick. You're talking about pros that tell you that they've used your baits and so forth. I bet you I had 4 or 5 guys come up to me at ICAST that are sponsored by other companies. They're not GSM anglers, and said, man, I caught, a couple big ones on that 6-inch trick shad this past year. And they're pro anglers. They can go buy whatever they want to. Somebody probably give them a deal on it just to hold it up and do a post with it. But they bought a $40 ABS trick shad and were successful with it.
Sure.
And, man, if you open my rod locker right now, and I'm not the standard for anything, I've got a ABS trick or two tied on in different colors. I've got a resin trick shad tied on. Like I use them both. And I don't know, man. I don't think we live in a weird time where everything's got to be black or white. And I just don't believe that's the case. I believe that black's fine, white's fine, gray's fine. As long as you're enjoying what you're doing, you're catching fish, you're getting out there, you're taking your kid, you're hanging out with your buddies, man, it's all good stuff. And everybody wants to turn everything into a debate or a problem. But man, I am as proud of Bucca brand as any brand we own, because I truly feel like we give people an opportunity to get into a category that, man, let's be honest. I remember when I had to make a choice to, buy a new reel or make an insurance payment on my truck. Like, I remember those days. I remember, man, do I have enough money to pay an entry fee to go fish this tournament because my electric bill's due on this date? Like, I've been there and I've lived it. And man, I mean, I feel like that's a real thing. That's real life stuff. And we are giving blue collar people an opportunity to get in the game and play the same game as everybody else.
Exactly. I think the biggest thing with me is I have so many kids come to me and, before the Bucca brand thing, before the Catch Club thing, says, hey, can you give me a discount on baits, or can you give me a bait or whatever, and I love kids to death. I know I could have gone down a path that was a really dark side. And because of fishing, I stayed up and right, and
Same here.
I always think about that, and I wanted those kids to be able to afford at least one of my designs. They don't have to spend $800 plus or something for a guy bait. They can buy something, an ABS, and it'd be pretty good. That's one of the main reasons why I did that. And I struggle with the decision on the business side of things because, I didn't want to affect my resin sales, but I think it's actually helped. You've got a whole another team pushing you and your brand. And, they say, well, if a $40 bait does good, maybe a $100 bait will be better. You can always look at it that way,
Yeah. I mean, you can go,
experience.
You can go buy an entry level anything. And if you fall in love with it, step up to the premium model,
Right.
And that's kind of the way I look at it. There's some things about ABS. I wrote this in that post, not that anybody cares, but I'd like to kind of get things out of my head on paper sometimes and or on a screen, I suppose. But, I think there's some cool things that we've done with ABS that you can't do with resin. Right. But also ABS has some challenges that resin is easier for resin, right? I think that the whole goal here is to keep trying to make baits that catch fish,
exactly,
that people can be successful with, that people can afford, that gives people an opportunity to experience it. And look, man, I there's very few things in life. I honestly can't think of one, but that there are people who are swim bait snobs, dude. Just that's the truth of the matter. Mm-hmm. If it's not this price point or this brand or whatever, then it's not any good. And that's pretty close-minded too. I don't know, man. I've got a wall of glides and multi-joints, and I'm on a big walker kick right now. And I just I don't care who makes it, man. I like tackle, and I like to play with different baits and try to realize, what makes this bait different or better or worse than this one. And I love what we're doing. And I just I'm gonna keep pushing you. I'm gonna keep dragging stuff out of you. And man, I will say this. We were talking about you at our meeting this week, that you are two things. You are the easiest person to work with that we design baits with, and you are the hardest person that we work with that we design baits with. And they're both for the right reasons. So I'm good with both of those. Your name's on it, right?
You got to have standards, you know. I mean, a lot of people say, Mike, what's your OCD? I said, my OCD is catching fish and making sure that bait swims good. You know, you have to make it swim good in order to catch fish. Now, there are some baits that swim bad to catch fish, but more likely you have to have that customer has to have confidence in it, you know.
Right.
You know, it needs to swim correctly. It needs to sink correctly. It needs to sink at the right rate of fall. All of those are key things, you know. And I think the biggest surprise for me was the differences that you have between designing an ABS bait and designing a resin bait. There's a lot of differences there. And, you know, it's not like you can just pull a pin and screw the screws out type of thing. You know, there's nothing you can really alter to a lot of it. So I feel bad because you have to go back to the drawing board and start. Or if a resin bait, I could just tweak it, you know. So that has been some of the more surprising things is trying to guess what it is, where it could be 3 or 4 different things, you know. So, but this is what I would do first. Let's try the easiest thing first, and then work our way to the hardest things. And but that was the key thing, you know. And there was some frustrating times there for a couple of baits, just trying to, how does it get what you want? How do you get it to swim like a resin bait, but it's not a solid piece of resin. It's hollow, it's buoyant, and it's got a cavity in it. So they act differently and they have different anchor points and stuff. So that was the surprising thing for me between the two.
And it's been a little bit of an evolution. I mean, you know, we've done some things. I think we've got everything as dialed now as we have had this whole time. You know, I'm pretty open and honest and lay everything out there on the table. It's kind of how I like to do life and business. But, you know, we struggled with some componentry in the very beginning that tested fine. And then when you get a run of them, there's a problem, you know. And hey, guess what, Mike? I've been designing baits for 20 plus years, and I've run into that my whole career. It all gets amplified now, obviously, with Facebook and social media and all that. It's, you know, a couple problems, it becomes the end of the world. But the thing, you mentioned this earlier, you know, in talking about the skills you learned in restaurant management is customer service. And,
100%.
you know, I have pushed our customer service team to treat it like you treat your customer service. Like I've made that comment. This man's name is on this brand. This man is the face of this brand. People are directing questions at him, problems to him. We've got to treat it the way he would treat it. And, you know, I feel like we're getting good at that. So I like the direction. I like where we're at. Think we've got some really exciting stuff. Let's talk about what we just launched at ICAST.
All right. We've got the 8-inch trick shad. That was one of my, I'm really excited about that one. I mean,
me too.
Little cute things, but you know, it's time to take the training wheels off. We've trained them on the 6, you know, it gets caught. I think I've got 4 double digits in resin. So I think we've got 8 or 7, something like that. And 4 of them were on the ABS base. So that's pretty strong. That's pretty darn strong. It's hard to get a double digit on a glide bait. It's not easy. And these baits are not just all by one person. You know, it's not O.H. Ivy. It's not J.B. Thomas. It's Florida. It's Georgia. It's South Carolina. It's Texas. It's all over the board. It's not one person doing one thing. And that's important too. So that's really cool. I'm really happy with how it's performed. It's called muskie. It's called barramundi. It's called peacocks. We had a blast with the peacocks down in South Florida. But anyway, back to ICAST, you know, and I think we've got people throwing that 6-inch and say, okay, let's bring them to the next level. You know, let's bring them to the next size. And you're going to start to see what I've been on for years. Bigger baits have a bigger drawing power. And I always like to tell people, said, why do they work? I said, well, think of it like this. I'm a 200, almost 300-pound dude. I'm sitting on the couch, and my wife puts a peanut on the shelf. And so I'm not getting up off the couch for a peanut. Not happening. That represents a 6-inch bait. Now you put a T-bone on the counter. My butt's going to get up out of my blow down, out of my lay down, and I'm going to get up there and I'm going to eat the T-bone. A big bass is an opportunistic feeder. It's a very efficient feeder, but it doesn't want to exert any more energy than it absolutely has to. That's how they get fat.
Sure.
That's
I've often, I am the guy on our team that's always pushing for bigger baits. I live on Kentucky Lake. Man, every big bait, genre there's been, I've tried to be on the front end of it on Kentucky Lake. I mean, I remember when I was buying Upton 16-inch worms from out west and throwing giant spoons, the big giant flutter spoons and I mean, big mop jigs and big glides and big whatever, and the big hollow bodies, what you name it. Here's what I've always told people: the bigger a bait is, the more visible it becomes. The more water it moves, the easier it is. Whether they will bite it or not, the bigger a bait is, the more opportunity a fish has to see and locate and know that bait is in their world. The smaller a bait gets, the closer you've got to get to the strike zone oftentimes.
The bigger the strike zone, you expand reasons I just explained, and that is key,
Yep.
Able to draw that fish out of that brush pile and make it worth his while. He's not going to do it for a tiny bait. The smaller the bait is, the closer you got to get to the fish.
Yep.
I pulled fish from 2 docks over. I'm fishing one dock and the fish came from the other dock over there. And I've seen that happen many times. You don't see followers with crankbaits very often or spinner baits. You see a little bit, but you see it a lot with glide baits. I see it a lot with bigger swim bait. Doesn't have to be a glide bait, multi-segment, glide bait, topwater, whatever, anything big. And the reason you have followers is because those bigger fish are smart.
Yep.
That's the trick. They don't get big by being stupid.
That's
but
right.
You're throwing a bait that a lot of people think is too big. So they don't see a lot of them. So it's kind of like the A-rig all over again, kind of. And I'm exaggerating a little bit on that. A-rig was a very popular bait, but it has that same effect. They've never seen it before. Those fish come unglued, and they're like, holy crap, it's working. And the same thing with bigger baits. They throw small stuff. They're used to the small stuff. But you throw something bigger, it's something different that they haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think it oftentimes, even with an A-rig, that's a great example. It's bigger, so it puts out a bigger footprint in the water. 100%. It alerts the fish to its presence more. And if, imagine a bass all day long sees forage this big swimming around. Mm-hmm. Like it sees that a million times. It'll eat them, but it's not excited about it. Mm-hmm. And then something this big comes through there. It's just you're playing on. You're putting, I think, a lot of variables, not necessarily in your favor, but you're not doing the status quo, right? You're not doing what everybody else is doing. You're not showing them what they always see, and because of that, I feel like your encounters become higher, right?
Absolutely.
And man, I love that 8-inch trick. I've been throwing it since we first started prototyping it. What I've told a lot of people, if you think the 6 swims good, multiply that by surface area, and it just swims better. I feel like a good glide fisherman with that 8-incher and a very average glide fisherman with that 6-incher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's just night and day. I mean that's just something that you have to experience to understand it. You got me and you can sit here and talk to a blue in the face until you physically see what we're talking about.
Right.
Then you will get it. You have to do that. That's just something that you have to experience. And like I said, I'm going to try to talk and try to educate people on that. But you really, once you get your first big fish on it, all the bells and whistles start going off in your head. Like, holy hell, opens up a whole new world. and you just bit the gateway drug, you know.
Yep.
And,
yeah, it's addictive too. You hit that nail on the head. Like I started, when I first started getting into glides and bigger swim baits, I start thinking about all the places that I should go and throw them
100%.
where I have an opportunity to catch a big one on it. And once you catch your first one on a big bait, you're looking at other big baits, and it is a gateway drug for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I had a guy come up to me. He's a local. He lives up in LJ. He says, "Mike, I've got a 50-acre lake, semi-subdivision type thing." And he says, "I can't catch them over 5 pounds in this thing." And I said, I've been throwing that 6-inch bull shad for a while, and I just can you come up here and teach me something? I said, I mean, I'm game for private lake any day. So I come up there, and I didn't make it halfway around the lake, and I had 30 pounds. And I was throwing a 9-inch bull shad.
Yep.
And that was a prime example of, bigger baits having that effect on fish. They can get conditioned to them too, to a degree.
Yep.
But, it's one of those things where you find that right spot, those private lakes, or even, public lakes. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Just wherever, where they don't throw, where you don't have a big swim bait confluence. Now, you go to California, everybody throws glide baits. I mean, it's like that's all they throw. But here in the Southeast, it's not quite that bad. But it's a lot. It's amazing the drawing power that you have. And I just started throwing some FFS stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is small. Do they really hit these things? I mean, little things, there's stuff that just regular traditional stuff. And I'm sitting here throwing 14, 10, 11, 9-inch baits. And it just it messes with your head a little bit, going backwards like that. But and then you feel like you're throwing with a toothpick.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a trophy guy. I like to catch giant fish. That's my thing. I'm not into it for the little fish. I just try to big stripers, big bass, big spots, big shoal bass, whatever it is. I just want to try to catch the biggest one I can. And I just like the thrill of the hunt, and catching them on those bigger baits seems like the easier way to do it than trying to wean them out with the smaller stuff. And one other thing I want to bring in, when you get schools of fish, stripers especially, and you throw medium-sized baits, 8, 9 inches, they attack up pretty regularly. I mean, 10-pounder or 5-pounder will kill a 9-inch bait. And I've started messing with bigger baits like 14s and stuff. And what I'm trying to do is actually, when you get those school of fish, I'm trying to wean off those little ones. So hopefully that big one can get on there. And that's something that we've been trying to do. And you can do that with bass too. They come in those schools of small fish, and you got 1 or 2 big fish in there. You're trying to wean those fish off, because how many times have I thrown a bait in there and school comes up and I catch one and it's a 4-pound dink, but there's an 8-pounder in the same group. If I could have weaned that fish off somehow, that's another strategy that I use for the bigger baits. And you just alter your sizes based on the type of fish that you're going for.
Do you think that there's a scenario where you come into let's talk bass for a second, not stripers. That's another thing that I love, that I know you love. But just talking bass specifically, do you think there's a scenario where you find a group of fish that's got, let's say it's a school of 3 to 4 pounders on this main lake bar, ledge, hump, whatever, and that there's a decent likelihood of there being a big one or two in the school? Is there a scenario where you think you pull up there and throw that real big bait first to try to get that big fish to fire, and then, either you get the little ones to follow or the big one eats, and then you go down in size and then try to catch what's there?
You can absolutely do that. I know when fishing the forest on our stuff, if once you pull a fish off a brush, you kind of lose your efficiency there. So you really got to play it, try a couple of them and see how it does. If you can get them to bite it, great. Especially bigger largemouth and stuff. I don't have a lot of bigger largemouth in some of my bigger lakes, but some of my smaller ones I do. And when you throw it down there, you can see, okay, those are pretty big fish. So I could probably throw the 9 and maybe get it down there and see if I can get them to hit. But sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes they want the smaller ones. It just depends on the size of the fish and what's working that day. There's a lot of technical decisions that goes into that. It just depends on if they're going to chase or not. Not every group of fish that you see is going to chase. Sometimes you hit the surface and they just run off.
Right.
There's times that happens, but there's other times where, okay, here they come, here they come, here they come, and you just try to burn it and get them to react. So it varies. To answer your question.
If you're wondering what I'm doing, I forgot I'm in my basement and I've got a motion activated light down here, and I don't know what the time frame is. Every so often I got to trip the light again. Growing up fishing an offshore lake that's very school oriented. I'm a cranker at heart. It's my favorite thing to do is crank a big plug, and I've experienced everything that you just talked about with swims and glides with a crankbait. I oftentimes catch the biggest one out of a school first, and then many times when you catch a few, or specifically if you got one hooked up, you reel him in and lose him, you move them. And I've tried to reposition and kind of get them back on a piece of structure. So it's a fun game. And so one more thing before we go, we're getting close. I don't want to keep you tied up. You got baits to build. I got stuff to do. But speaking of, you said smaller baits, I am extraordinarily excited about that bigger trick shad. But here's what I think is going to be the belle of the ball is the 5-inch ABS Bull Shad.
100%. I mean, smaller baits will always outsell bigger ones. That's true with resin. You're still trying to get those people that are. You're not going to be able to convince everybody to get a bigger bait. Just some people just don't want to. They don't want to adjust. They don't want to learn, and that's cool. But the 5 has been a long seller for us for so many years. I mean, that's the bait that put us on the map, and it's still selling 16 years later as one of the top best baits for us. But those smaller baits are very good sellers. They appeal to the young angler, the advanced angler, the tournament angler. They have a lot of appeal to a lot of people. You don't need any special equipment to throw it or any bigger reel or any of that stuff. And those will always be your bread and butter from a sales standpoint. And they're good fun baits to fish. Don't get me wrong. If you want to go catch some fish, that's what you throw. That's exactly what you throw.
My 12-year-old son, kind of funny story. His name's Fisher, which he'll probably end up doing ballet or something. But he I can't hardly get him in my bass boat, but he loves to pond fish. Loves it.
Cool.
That's his gig. That's his jam. And I think I probably burned him out when he was little, taking him when it was tough and keeping him out there too long. Typical dad mistakes. But man, he got kind of refired up about fishing a year or two ago because of YouTube, which is awesome. Because there's a whole segment of our industry and market and demographic that's where their inspiration comes from, where mine is the history of it, the pro bassing scene, the trophy chasers and all that stuff that I kind of grew up looking at. His is not like that. He's a different generation, and his absolute number one favorite bait in the world is the Bucca baby rat. Cool. Favorite bait on earth, but he is super fired up about the 5-inch ABS Bull Shad. Like he's told me, he said, I will catch every fish in every pond on that bait. So
that's awesome.
It is awesome. Yeah. We've got some fun stuff. We got some stuff we're going to drop later this year that going to change things up a little bit. I'm super excited about it. Man, I can't tell you. I said this earlier, and I mean it. Man, we've got Yamamoto, we've got Dobbins, we've got some incredible brands. Robo, 15, 16 brands now. I'm not saying this because you're on here. Bucca's my favorite. Like, it's just my favorite brand. It's probably the nearest to my heart. And I love the authenticity of working with you and how hard you push us. Good isn't good enough. It's got to be great. And man, I'm just I'm excited. I'm excited about what the future holds. I'm excited about what we're doing right now, and man, I'm excited. You probably get them more than I do, Mike, but I get messages all the time, with a picture of a fish a guy caught on an ABS trick, or a bull rat, or whatever it is. I'll never get tired of that. Never ever. Like I get a million, hey, will you sponsor me things? And sometimes I'm just like, oh gosh, but I never ever get sick of a grown up and a kid, an old person. It don't matter if they're holding up a fish with one of our baits hanging out of his mouth, like it's like I caught it. So,
exactly.
So man, with that, I'm not gonna keep you. Thanks a ton for coming on. Hey, I encourage you guys all to go over to baits.com and check out the Bucca brand lineup. They're available at your favorite retailer. If they're not, tell them they should be. And go check out bullshad.com. That's the spot that got me hooked on swim baiting and glide baiting, and go check out Mike's work, and I can guarantee you'll be happy with what you buy over there too. So hey, thanks for hanging out with us, Mike.
Yeah.
Man, thanks for being here. We'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Let's go fishing.
Let's do it. All right. Well, guys, thank y'all. Come back and see us next time on the Think Outside podcast, brought to you by baits.com. Oh, there we go. Oh my gosh, this is